Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I want to let Phoebe introduce the topic.
Well, recently, I think you and I have talked about a lot how different things are compared to people in our parents' generation, and then like people in our age group. Just because I think the different generations have dealt with different problems, like society-wise, but also just personal-wise. I don't know if that's a good way to put it, but I just think it's easy for a lot of people our age and even younger than us to feel like their parents don't
Well, I
understand them.
think I think we should preface it like this: like, what did what was the expectations of our parents growing
Hmm.
up
Hmm.
versus for us what it was like growing up?
Yeah. I
So,
mean,
I guess for our parents, it would have been, I don't really know, because you're thinking about a world that still had technology. It just didn't have social media, didn't
hmm
have a lot of texting or phones.
yeah. Well, there wasn't any personal devices. It was pretty much just if you had money, you would have a home landline. But
Yeah,
even then,
yeah.
not everyone had that.
But it was still like, it was still a very bustling society where people worked kind of like nine to
Hmm.
five or whatever.
Hmm.
A lot of people worked in corporate offices and skyscrapers, stuff like that. So it
Yeah.
wasn't so much different than it is today. They just didn't have the added factor of the phones and all that sort of thing. The
Yeah.
internet was just kind of becoming a thing.
Mhm. I think there was even more emphasis on like social gatherings though, because I look back at like pictures from like my parents' photo albums, and like it always seemed like there was always people over at someone's house,
Yeah,
whether it was
yeah,
their house or someone else's. Like, and it would just be people sitting around like a table, just like laughing. Like those old pictures that look kind of like fuzzy and like the color isn't that
yeah,
great, and it like
right.
just looks like a fake photo because it's like no one ever takes pictures like that. That's all it is selfies now. But like people would just get together pretty much every other day or on the weekends, and now it's just more like, you know, texting people 24/7, but then you never hang out with them.
Yeah, I feel like if you were growing up then, I feel like there's this kind of similar expectation of what it is today when you're growing up. I feel like the expectation was you go all through primary school and then you graduate and then you just kind of essentially get kicked out at 18 and got to figure out what
Yeah.
you want to do. I think now it's more like you graduate and then you have to go to college, you have to go to
Hmm.
trade school, or you have to work. You don't necessarily
Yeah.
have to leave your parents' house, but I feel like then it was more like they didn't care if you went to college or not. You just had
Yeah.
to find something. You had to get out of the house, and I feel like there was a big emphasis on you had to find someone to marry, and you had to have a family. You had to have children to
Yeah.
be quote. You had to have
Hmm.
children and a good job to be quote successful. And even now, that's still kind of like how it is. I mean, that's kind of a staple of American society is the quote kind of successful American dream type thing is you have a lot of money,
Hmm.
you have a spouse, a good looking spouse, and then you have some children and that sort of thing. So I think that was kind of like the expectation of children growing up then.
Yeah. And yeah, I think going off of what you said, it's like all the emphasis was on getting out of the house when you're 18, or like at least having someone that you plan on marrying or something, or
Right.
already a job lined up, you know. But now that I think the emphasis first off is college now, rather than like all that becomes secondary to college now.
But I also feel like, and this is kind of a little more like our grandparents' generation, but I also feel
Hmm.
like a big thing for them was like, you're in the midst of stuff like Vietnam and the
Yeah.
sexual revolution and all this kind of stuff to where, you're like, you're either getting drafted or there are all these protests going on or
Hmm.
there's like a kind of a radical shift in morality, in
Yeah.
traditional morality. And so I think for young adults then, like people who kind of just graduated high school, I think that was a big thing of like kind of finding their identity and stuff. Was that I feel like they could see their identity and stuff like, oh, I'm a hippie, or oh, I'm going off to fight in the war, or
Yeah.
oh, I'm a staunch conservative. I'm against all this kind of stuff. Whereas with us, I guess the defining factor has been like the rise of mental health stuff being
Yeah.
talked about, and then coronavirus, and then also social media.
Hmm. I think, just technology in general has kind of taken over our generation when compared to, our parents and our grandparents. They had no technology really at all, like not even the internet. And I
Yeah.
think, as much as you want to say it doesn't impact you, it's part of you. Like it's part of your everyday life, you know, and it kind of shapes how you interact with people.
Well, you gotta think our parents went through the day at school without having a handheld phone in their pocket.
Yeah.
But we gone through every day at school, not even being able to imagine what it's like not having our phones with us. So you got to think like your parents couldn't just contact you when you're at school. Like your mom
Yeah.
can't just
Yeah.
send you a text. Nobody can really get a hold of you in the moment, kind of thing. So that's kind of something to think about. Is that today we're more connected than ever, and so like if you're kind of a mischievous school student, your parents could keep tabs on you, or just like really kind of anyone could, like if you had a helicopter parent or something. So
Yeah. Because I mean, when I talked to my parents about what it was like when they were in high school, because that's when they met and they started dating in high school, like you're so used to being able to just be able to contact anyone at any time now for people our age.
right,
That even when you're in class, you can just talk to whoever you want to talk to, even if they aren't even in your country, But my parents would have to pass notes like in the hallways because they wouldn't have the same classes.
right,
Or my mom would have to give a note to one of her friends or to one of my dad's friends to give to him. So like they would go the whole day just like passing notes every other period, and that was the only time they were able to like quote unquote talk.
right.
Versus nowadays everyone can just talk, whenever the heck they want. So it's just like even that itself makes it so different, just how, I mean, relationships are different now, but also friendships are different, and just, now you know everything that's going on in the world around you. And sometimes that could be kind of depressing
Right.
because, back then you wouldn't know what's happening until you got home or even days after the fact that something has happened.
Can you hear Valkyrie purring?
No, I can't. Is he on you?
Yeah, he's sitting in my lap.
Oh, he wants to be part of the podcast.
He is. We got his picture up there.
Oh, yeah, that's true. He's part of it every time we record.
Yeah, I feel like back then, um, there was probably a lot more social gatherings. Probably like with your, if we're still talking about school, probably like with your class. But I feel like outside of
Hmm.
school, I feel like you may would have known your neighbors better. Like there would have
Yeah,
been more kind of like family and community get-togethers.
yeah,
Not that we don't have those anymore. We don't have those like they used to have. I feel like that's why there can be such a divide between the youth of just this generation and their parents, is because the parents grew up with not having what we have.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you constantly see like a trope in the movies of like, you got some old parent and then you got some like little kid who's always got their face in the screen texting someone, and the
Yes.
parents
Yes.
always getting mad at him. I mean, you see that in all kinds of movies.
Hmm.
And I
Like it
think,
makes that kid like, not part of the family or being annoying
or it's
because
just like
they.
the parents getting frustrated with that kid because they feel like, oh, you're not focused on what's going on around you, and you're
Yeah.
so interconnected on this crap kind of
Hmm.
thing. So
Yeah. I think, in a lot of ways, it's kind of puts us ahead of our parents and even the generations before them, you know, when it comes to as like the internet and technology just broadens the amount of connections you can have. Like
yeah,
you get to talk to people you would never have met otherwise. And
yeah,
I think in a way that sets us ahead of a lot of past generations, but also holds us back because we lose that personal one-on-one ability to interact with people.
yeah,
Where, like you said back then, I mean, I even see it now, like all these neighbors that are like really old, like I'm surprised they're still living on their own, but like they all know my parents and they all know my grandparents, whereas I can't really imagine talking to my neighbors if I move out, like it just doesn't feel important to me to get to know my neighbors, you know. Whereas older generations know all their neighbors, which is just
yeah,
such a foreign thing for people. Like I think if anything, uh, us being able to talk online rather than in person makes us more awkward and nervous to talk to people in person, like to meet new people. Because, like, I know I get really nervous, like, trying to meet new people.
you have an instinct not to trust who you're talking to.
Yeah, yeah, and at the same time, you don't have those personal skills, like the interpersonal skills to
You
talk to
also, there's
people.
nothing when you're meeting someone for the first time. There's nothing to bridge the gap. Like you don't have a friend that knows them. You see what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
saying? Unless you're at school or something, but even then, it's just like kind of thing where it's still awkward and stuff because you don't have
yeah,
like that kind of icebreaker. But I feel like, people were probably more, not necessarily more easygoing back then, but they probably had better social skills because it's all they knew.
yeah, yeah. I would say, like, there's people in my classes now that, you know, I'll be sitting next to them and they don't say a word. But when we work on a project together, all of a sudden they're like emailing me like crazy. But then even though we've been emailing, they don't say a word to me in class. They almost like pretend like they don't know me.
Yeah, that's
So
a,
it's
that's
like,
a that's a big thing going to class and stuff that can
yeah,
make you feel really lonely. Is like when you have to work together with your coworker, you have to work together with someone in your class.
mhm,
You start working and it's like, oh, you kind of develop a relationship, but then
yeah,
outside of whatever y'all are doing, y'all don't ever get together. There's no, I feel like our generation, there's a lack of kind of like heart, like a lack of emphasis on just people having relationships and people valuing each other for people. I feel like you're valued based off
yes,
what you can offer to the classroom, what you can offer to your boss, to your employer, or what you can
mhm,
offer, to a team you're playing for, or any number of
mhm.
things, which isn't good for us. It's not healthy.
No, no, because back then it was all about just talking to people and making friends.
All right.
Whereas now it's more like, are you worth talking to in person kind of attitude?
Yeah, and I feel like people now shack up with just like one or two different people who are their
Yeah.
go-to things, and it puts them off to making new connections.
Yeah, it's almost like you stick with the people you have met in person before and have
It's
a
honestly like
relationship with.
it's almost like you kind of become codependent on the person you can truly be yourself around, because
Yes.
you feel like you feel like now you can't just kind of open up to anyone, and so when you find someone you can, is you feel like I gotta hold on to them kind of thing.
Yeah, because I mean, nowadays, I mean, you can't tell me that you're 100% speaking the way you would speak to someone in person when you're talking to them online or texting them. Like, you
Right.
just can't, because it's so easy, to say whatever the heck you want when you're texting someone. Whereas you wouldn't have said it that way if you were talking to them in
Yeah,
person.
especially when you throw in stuff like Snapchat kind of thing, where it's
Oh,
like
yes.
some T's going down. You'll
Uh
know if
huh.
something happens, like if someone screenshots something or deletes something.
Yes. Yeah, I
But
think, um, social media puts us, like I said earlier, like it puts us like an advantage over what previous generations had, because we have access to so many people and so many connections, but it also just kind of is our downfall
I
because,
think it puts us in a cycle. You're constantly comparing yourself to others, and then it's not
yeah,
just that, you're not being genuine to who you are. Because it's like people say, like 90% of our communication as human beings is body language communication.
hmm,
I mean, just the subtlest things, just being around someone without even saying a word, you can get a sense of it. You form a judgment about
yes,
them,
yes,
right? And so,
yeah,
also, you get on social media or something and you're talking to someone, you lose all aspect of that. And like we were saying on the Tinder episode about dating, you're talking to someone on the phone, you don't
hmm,
even get the ability to get the sense. This is especially important if you're a girl, of getting the sense is like, is this person creepy or not,
yeah, like
kind
you're
of
not
thing.
able to get that initial instinct that you would get if you saw them face to face.
Right. And so, it just kind of creates a dilemma of like, yeah, you're talking to someone online, but it's like, it kind of just makes you want to be with them in person, just so
Hmm.
you hang out. And I know I always struggle with in high school, and even now, I just kind of struggle with like, I really just want to have friends I can kind of just hang out with and stuff, but it can be hard to just get people just to be kind of one on one with you if you don't have social media and all this other
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Because the first thing people ask is like, "Oh, do you have Snap or what's your
Yeah, yeah,
Instagram?" Because
yeah,
and that's so stupid to me. Because like, wouldn't you want to get to know me like
yeah,
in person before you give me access to your personal stuff? You know, like that should. I've always felt that social media should be a tool to keep, in contact with someone. It shouldn't be your
yeah,
main method of talking to your friends.
yeah. And I feel like now we're more anxious around people. Like around, like, let's say, even though you're friends with someone and you trust someone, let's say you
Hmm.
just go hang out with them, it's just like you might feel anxious around them because you've never been
Yeah.
kind of just like, one on one with each other, and it takes time for that relationship to develop.
Yes.
And but I think kind of our interconnectedness and everything being online, it can make us more anxious around people because we don't necessarily know how to act, like we don't necessarily know how to be
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's because, like I said earlier, like you aren't 100% acting the way you would in person
Right,
whenever you're talking online or over the phone.
right,
So, like, in a way, when you are hanging out with someone that you've only really interacted with over the phone, it's like you got to learn a whole new way to act because someone acts different with every person they're around, whether it's your family or
right.
friends. But at the same time, it's different when you're online. So it's like a whole different set of etiquette and a whole different like personality when you're in person. And so, in a way, I think it's causing our generation to lose, you know, those skills and that confidence to talk to people in person.
Yeah, and there's definitely like, I mean, I know for me, I'm sure a bunch of people can relate to this. I know for me, especially when I was in high school, I would always kind of romanticize stuff like, I'd be like, oh, well, in past generations, people didn't have all this stuff. And so I kind of
Yeah,
romanticized the thought of just like not having a phone with you, not having the internet, just
yeah,
being it to where everybody had was forced to actually go out and get to know each other.
yes,
Because a lot of times in high school, at social functions and kind of all this stuff, I would always feel like I couldn't just be down to earth with people because people already
mhm,
had like their kind of cliques and the thing and whatever was going on in their life. And it was like anything they were kind of talking about or thinking about, they all knew about it because they were all online with each other, kind of thing.
yes,
But it's
yeah,
just like when I be in person, I just be trying to hang out. But I could feel like people didn't know just how to hang out, just how to
yeah,
be genuine and just have a good time. And if you find someone like that, today, like that's pretty rare. So
yeah. Yeah, and I used to like get so like embarrassed and frustrated because everyone my age had a cell phone except for me. Like my mom and dad made it a point not to let me have a cell phone until I was in high school. But at the same time, like I'm glad they did because I was able to build up that, those skills of being able to talk to people in person. And that's kind of why I was able to make so many friends whenever I was in school. Because the only way of talking to people was to go talk to people whenever I was at school. And, I wasn't ever part of all the drama because the drama always happened because of people using their phones.
right.
Like I was always like just a friend to everyone and everyone liked me because I was never involved in any of that.
Right.
And, once I did get a phone, since I had already had all those years of, feeling that I already have made all these friends with everyone and I'm confident that I prefer talking to people in person, I wasn't like, oh, let me jump into using all the social
Right.
media that everyone else is using. I didn't even have Snapchat until after I was out of high school. So like I didn't have that, you know, feeling like the only way I can talk to people is
Right.
online. Like a lot of my friends do
You
now. Like
know,
I have a lot of friends that like hardly even talk to me at all
right.
when we're hanging out, yet they'll act like we're best friends when we're texting or something. Like, well, you don't
Right.
even talk to me whenever we're hanging out, so I don't understand why you feel like we have this relationship when you act like you don't even know me that well when we're in person.
Yeah. I think kind of another thing is when I was in college, I mean, it wasn't so bad in high school, but in college, it was like I felt more lonely than ever
Hmm.
because you have all these people around you at the school, right? But everything's
Yeah.
online.
Hmm.
And I don't have any social media or whatever, so I don't have any ways of kind of getting connected with everyone. And
Yeah.
feeling like I just kind of, it was like going somewhere and not being able to speak the native language.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
because it was like everybody kind of connected online and stuff. But I felt more lonely than ever because it'd be like I'd be walking next to people, I'd be in class with other people. I had people everywhere, but we wouldn't just kind of, nobody would really even say hi to each other, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you do say hi to someone, you're seen as like kind of, you can be seen as kind of like a
Weird.
weirdo.
Like you're trying too hard.
Yeah, like you're weird or you're trying to force a relationship.
Yeah. Because I
And
mean, even school enables it. Like they send you all these links, like join this Instagram group or follow this page to meet people, you know?
Yeah.
And even when I went into college, it felt like all these people already had their cliques. And I'm just
Right.
like, I'm going into it thinking, okay, I'm ready to start meeting people, but all of a sudden everyone already has their comfort groups, you know?
Yeah.
And they don't want to accept anyone who hasn't already been initiated into those little Instagram groups or, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
And feeling that loneliness, especially when you're young and you're in school, will prompt you to go do things you don't necessarily feel comfortable doing, like joining some type of club or joining,
Yeah.
a sports team or something like that. It'll prompt you to do something like that, or trying to fit into a certain type of crowd. It'll prompt you to do something that's not yourself,
Yes.
just so you can fit in and try to find the friends and stuff you're looking for. I remember in high school, especially, I really struggled with that. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, even me and you were saying earlier that it feels like our generation has been suffering with more mental health than our previous generations. But I think
yeah,
humans just have mental health problems in general. It's just more out in the open now. Because I think the point we've kind of gotten across is people are more comfortable being too open whenever everything's online, when otherwise they wouldn't say
right,
this stuff in person, you know?
right,
And you mentioned like feeling lonely. It's because like me and you both said earlier that I think it's in human nature to, have that personal interaction with other humans. And, being online and texting people, like, yeah, you're talking to someone, but you don't have that interaction concept with it. So you're almost like starving your mentality and your brain from having human interaction. So I think that's kind of why people like you can have a lot of followers, you can have a lot of people texting you and snapping you, but you'll still feel like lonely for some
yeah. You
reason.
feel empty.
Yeah, it's like you feel like, do I have friends? Why do I feel like I don't have any friends, and that why am I craving people to talk to? And why do I feel lonely and sad? But it's like I think the fact that people don't interact with people anymore has a lot to do with it. Because like I
Yeah,
talk to my high school friends all the time online. Yet, I have felt like, further away from them than ever. Like I
right.
feel like we aren't close anymore, yet we talk every other day, which is such a weird feeling.
I honestly think, like, as bizarre as it sounds, like it would help people a lot if there was some kind of like group you could go to every week. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But the hard thing
Hmm.
with that kind of thing is like people don't show up because people are like,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'll go, but they don't show up because they're nervous or they feel like it's too weird, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
and
But
that's
like,
that's what's so sad is that people think, oh, this is stupid or this is weird
yeah,
because it's not the norm for our
yeah,
generation
I've always
anymore to
thought
do that.
people could really benefit, like, if there were kind of like group things, like let's say you're in school, you kind of have like a group meeting with some people from like your classes, or maybe
Yeah.
it's just like you're in like a like a boys club or something where you just get together with some other guys. I think that could like, or like a girls club where some girls get together. I think that could help people a lot. Where y'all just get
Yeah.
together for a little bit. Y'all don't get on y'all's phones, and y'all just get to be real with each other, because everybody, in terms of men, every man needs that fraternity. In terms of women, like every
Yeah.
woman needs that kind of sorority, so to speak, like that
Yes.
sisterhood, and for men, like that
Yeah.
kind of like that brotherhood.
Yeah. And
So
then sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and the other thing I wanted to say just about social media and all that, so I feel like it even makes us kind of more sensitive,
Oh yeah,
because
for
I feel
sure.
like on social media, we kind of spend all our time talking to people online, and then in person, someone can say in person, since people may not know how to act, they might do something that's kind of offensive or do something that's rude.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I feel like, kind of we can get offended easily online because people can say whatever they want online.
Yes.
And also stuff can get misinterpreted, like messages can get misinterpreted.
Oh yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Like even with someone you know very well, it's easy to take something when you're reading it, taking it the wrong way, because I think our brains naturally take things the wrong way based on any insecurities we have,
Right. Yeah. But I guess there are some like positive social media. One positive, like in our personal experience, is it helps with long distance.
Oh
Or
yeah.
not necessarily social media, just technology. Just being able to text.
Having
call,
access to communication.
Yeah,
with
being able
anyone.
to text and call each other, and just like the watch party stuff on Netflix. Like we were able to watch Twilight, not too long ago. She made me watch it. No, I'm just kidding. I liked it, but it's stuff like that. And then I guess something that comes to my mind is like how an entire community of people who don't even know each other were like able to come together and make the GameStop stock, go up a lot, and fight the big investors. So it's just like there are some things like that happen where a bunch of people online will rally together against the company or against the government or any number of things.
And then like our last podcast, we talked about how the Gabby Petito case just blew up like crazy, and that was all because of social media.
Right, and that's stuff that wouldn't necessarily happen in our parents' generation or in generation before that.
No, not at all. And I think, when people say, "Oh, it was the '80s," like that kind of saying, like,
oh my gosh,
back when like no one was worried about letting their 10-year-old kid walk to school, and now everyone's freaking out about even walking to your car because everything is online all the time. Like you see everything bad in the world immediately, and it just makes you feel scared.
Well, you just feel like you can just feel so empty because you can feel like everyone's lonely, and you can feel it when you feel lonely and when you feel like no one cares about you, like outside of your family and who it can feel like, let's say you're driving somewhere and you see a car accident and someone died or something, like that can just make you feel empty because you just see like, dang, like what does it really mean to be human? Like is the world this empty? I just feel all this kind of like pain and desire just to have companionship and all these things, but I see kind of like death and crime and violence all around me kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or even just with subtle stuff like being at school, like, oh, I see like people mistreating people or people, or a teacher mistreating, or any number of things that can make you feel really depressed. And I think, like we were saying, that can really be like the root of kind of mental health problems and stuff like that. It's because like kind of living your life and feeling that way is a trauma in and of itself. And mental health is just a way to describe the effects that your personal trauma has on you. And so I think that's kind of how it can develop.
Yeah, I think unfortunately the fact that everything is just at our hands at all times kind of brings in a lot of negativity, because you just assume, like, I see this all over my timeline, I see it every day, you assume that's how the entire world is,
right?
When that's not true. That's just a small portion of the world that unfortunately people are more willing to post things that make them upset, things that make them mad, things that are terrible, because those things go viral,
Right.
And it makes you think like, dang, the world sucks, but in reality that's just one person.
Right.
That's not representative of everyone. so it just kind of like gives you this feeling, like you said, like a hopelessness and just like a disappointment that like, is this the world like I have to live in? Is this the world I'm gonna have to be in after school?
Right.
It's just depressing.
And to your point, it doesn't help that everything, and I'm telling you, every single thing for our generation, our society, is in some way divisive. You want to talk? You want to talk about the biggest thing is politics. Like everything is politically divisive. You're either Democrat or Republican, and then it's not just with politics. It can be with the stupidest stuff. It can be like something with gaming, like, oh, you either like the Xbox or you like the PlayStation.
Yes.
Just, it can be the most stupid things that people will fight over. They'll fight to the death over it because everything is divisive. And you know, that can be kind of stressful sometimes.
It's like almost everything is polarizing now because it's so easy for people online to rally against something. Because if anything, since you feel like you can, you just do it, even if you have no connection to whatever the topic is.
Yeah. So back to what we were saying about our parents' generation. Who do you think has the more stressful generation?
Ooh, you know, honestly, I don't think either one is more stressful than the other. I think it's different stresses, like different things are stressful.
Yeah, different stressors.
So like it's not necessarily that one or the other is more stress. It's just different things, different issues are having to be dealt with for different generations.
Yeah, here's my belief. For one, I believe that there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, we'll always, across all times in humanity, there will always be some struggles that we share in common.
Yeah.
You know, we'll always have to deal with existentialism. We'll always have to deal with people lying and people hurting each other and all kinds of that stuff. But I do think we have a tendency to romanticize the past or to romanticize something we don't have.
Yeah.
And so we may look at past generations and be like, oh, they didn't have social media and all this stuff, and we can kind of romanticize that. And was it better socially? Was it not better? I mean, maybe. I mean, maybe if you lived in America and like you weren't white, you know, it would have been much worse than it is now. So it's just like, you really just never know. I mean, but of course it is fun to kind of romanticize that sort of thing and kind of trash the time you do live in because you feel like it's really stressful and you want something better. You feel like you deserve something better. But that's just not really the way the world works, you know?
Yeah. Like, I hear it so many times from older people. Like, oh,
the 80s!
We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have social media, that kind of thing. Like, back then, we had to actually read books, you know?
We had to go out and hunt for our food every single day.
And it's like, unfortunately, people like to say, oh, well, your generation, you're weak. Like, oh, the snowflakes, that kind of thing. And it's just like, which, I mean, in a way, it can be seen as true. Like, there is some backing to what older generations say. But at the same time, you could argue, like, well, we have more knowledge than you do now because we have knowledge at our fingertips at all times.
I would argue that if they were in our situation, they'd be the same exact way.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And it's frustrating because, like, I think a lot of older generations like to think of us as, you know, not intelligent, childish, and, like, we don't even know what stress is kind of thing.
You don't know what it takes to be financially stable.
Yeah.
You don't know how hard the work world is.
Yeah. And it's frustrating because, like, well, then show me. Then tell me what. That way I can figure it out because, like, no one else is doing it for me, you know. You pushing me down and telling me that because I'm in my generation I don't know anything isn't helping me, you know. And then at the same time, they're the ones that come to us to help them sign into their Facebook. Or how do I zoom into this picture? or that kind of thing.
You can tell me
You know?
how these Zoom meetings work?
Yes, and it's just like it's frustrating because, no, we haven't had to go to a library and find a book to use as a source the way you guys did,
Yeah.
But at the same time, we don't have to struggle to learn anything because we have it there
Man,
with us.
the boomers just love to brag about how hard they had it.
Yes, and like that's a flex to them or something,
It's just okay. It's just if you start talking that way, it's just gonna go all the way down to the dawn of time. Because the caveman about to be like, well, crap, I had to go out and hit something with my club and eat it.
Yeah.
And then the next person is gonna be like, well, I had to freaking, I don't know, build a fire or something, and then the next person's gonna go blah blah blah, and then it just goes all the way down the line because it's just people just have a tendency to do that.
Yeah, when in reality, it doesn't matter because that time has come and gone. Like
Right.
You telling me about all the things that you had to deal with don't affect me right now because that's just not how the world is anymore.
Right.
Like you have to move on. You have to keep moving forward. You can't get stuck on the way things used to be.
Right.
And I think that definitely is something that I get a lot of the time. It's just like, oh, well, we had to deal with this, Or like back then, we had
Back
to
in my day.
do these things by hand.
Yeah.
And then people like, yes, like me and you have talked about, like our generation is losing those interpersonal skills of like talking to people.
Right.
But I hear all the time, and it's so condescending tone where they're like, your generation isn't even gonna know how to talk to people, or like,
Yeah.
like that.
How are you not gonna know how to talk to people?
Yes, it's just like, it's frustrating. And I think, it does hold weight to an extent.
Yeah, we might not know how to talk to people with our mouths, but we can do that. We can do that cheese on you give us a phone. We can do it really well.
Oh, yeah. And then I always hear like,
we've come up with an entire language of emojis.
Exactly.
You gotta think about that. Like
honestly, I think me and you could have a whole conversation with just emojis and know exactly
we
what
gotta
we're trying
think
to
for a
say.
second that just by communicating with each other, we've picked up an entire new language of using emojis.
Yeah, and I think, it's easy to bash on our generation because, we are heavily reliant on communication online. But at the same time, it builds those skills of being able to communicate outside of being in person with each other.
Yeah.
Because, like, when I see older people text and I read their text, I'm like, why are you talking like that? That what you're texting doesn't make sense. And it's just like, well, you may know how to talk to people in person, but obviously you don't know how to talk to people online.
Right.
So it's just it's a give and take in a way. I do think our generation is a little too reliant on technology, for sure. So my hope would be that with time, things will kind of shift from only being online.
My prediction is that the next big breakthrough is going to be virtual reality, and then maybe not our kids' generation, but probably our grandkids are going to be like they're going to have something where they put a headset or something on, and they go into a virtual world and get to put the headset on and play Skyrim in real life, kind of thing.
Yeah, and in a way, I think that would be better than what things are now.
Yeah.
Because you could have like a virtual conversation with one of your friends.
Yeah.
Or like do homework with one of your friends and make it seem like you guys are actually sitting.
Yeah, I mean, you could, let's say you have a best friend, over in a different country, and y'all can just get in this virtual world and hang out with each other, and you can be the best you can look what you want to look like and represent yourself how you want and all that kind of thing. It's just like a Ready Player One.
Yeah, because no matter how you put it, humans need all those senses. Like, you need that visual and verbal communication. And whenever you can say, like, oh, well, just call them, but that's not the same. Like, you want to be able to talk to someone while also having those visual cues of talking to that person.
Yeah, and I think that'll be like the next big breakthrough.
Yeah. I think that'll definitely be.
It'll either be that or it'll be like space colonization.
Yeah. I mean, well, imagine, let's say another pandemic hits, God forbid, like 30, 40 years down the line, and there is virtual reality. It won't be a Zoom meeting where everyone has their camera off and no one's talking. It'll be a virtual reality, like you're actually sitting in the classroom,
Yeah.
And I think that'll definitely change a lot of things, because there's so many kids that can't go to school regardless if there's a pandemic.
Right.
And if they have that virtual reality option of going to class and having that as an option, that would totally change the game when it comes to how kids grow up and learn how to communicate with people.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think it's about time we wrap it up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but on a side note, wouldn't it be cool if you could, like, I don't know, like, go to war or something in a virtual reality, but you didn't actually have to feel pain and stuff like that?
What? Like, control like a robot or something?
No, let's say you could go to a virtual reality world and, like, I don't know, just like have a gunfight with some people, but y'all don't, but y'all just respawn afterwards, and you don't feel any of the pain.
Well, that's one of, like, those things
it would become like a game.
Well, that's the thing. That's what, like, I've seen so many horror movies where, like, virtual reality, like, games and, like, shooter games, like, turn people into killers where they think they can, like, just be super reckless in real life and just respawn, when in reality, like, you don't get another life,
Yeah.
That would be a problem, I think.
I think that about wraps it up.
That was a good topic.
You got any final comments?
Not really, just that, like I said earlier, I think our generations have had to deal with different things. Doesn't mean either generation has, more grit or a better skills. It just means everyone has had to deal with different issues in regard to the times.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.